Welcome to Mission Undercover. More than ever, as truth is veiled under the cover of lies, the seal of immorality, and the depths of despair, it becomes vitally important to expose the truth and uncover that which has been hidden. Thank you for your support. This episode is sponsored by Fish.Audio. If you're a podcaster, voiceover artist, or content creator looking for realistic AI-generated audio, you need to check out Fish.Audio. Fish.Audio is ranked among the top 2 most realistic voice generators in 13 languages. Fish.Audio lets you create high-quality voiceovers with just a few clicks. It's open source, friendly, super fast, and best of all, affordable, with the lowest prices in the market. Whether you need multilingual voice cloning, real-time speech-to-speech conversion, or professional quality narration, Fish.Audio has it all. Try it now for free at Fish.Audio and see why it's the best AI voice tool out there. Fish.Audio is offering a free trial on their website. Do not miss out if you want to enhance the quality of your content and elevate the quality of your production as a podcaster, YouTuber, or artist. To distill what is happening in the world right now, amidst the capture of our global order by Donald Trump, we have to understand the history of globalism, and we have to consider whether that order, which is being demolished before our eyes, was worthy of the respect that it held in the first place. I take the view that this global order was flawed in the first place, but the way that Donald Trump and the United States are distorting and reshaping it is far worse. Globalism and our current international systems were largely established in the aftermath of World War II, when nations recognized the need to be cooperative rather than engaging in individualism and self-interest. The world was enveloped in socialist fervor. In some places, like the UK, it was weaponized for collective betterment. In other places, it was weaponized for repression and centralization of authority, namely the Soviet Union and its satellite states. The pinnacle of this cooperation and new mentality was the establishment of global organizations, such as the WHO and the UN. These bodies were designed to spearhead global collective development. However, one key influence deterred such progress from occurring. It was none other than the dominant power of our times and their disruptive influence, the United States of America. America established these institutions, and they are to this day dictated and controlled by America. Take the example of the IMF. The IMF strictly adheres to American economic orthodoxy and imposes it forcefully upon poorer nations, where it is unlikely to be effective. This is a demonstrable failure of globalism, that it is, in fact, not really global. It centralizes power in the hands of America and the Western powers, who can evade accountability and impose their will upon the world. Another example that can illustrate this further is the United Nations. The United Nations Security Council, comprising Western powers like the UK and the USA, provides veto powers to its constituents. These are based on historical significance rather than any merit or any logical reasoning. As a consequence, America and Britain have evaded accountability and have been able to impose expansionist, imperial, neo-colonial ambitions upon the world without reprisal. Iraq, Vietnam, Afghanistan. The terrorism of the American empire knows no bounds, for they themselves are the gatekeepers of the guardrails and withdraw them upon their own request and self-interest. This continues today. The flaws of globalism have continued to enable oppression and injustice. Israel continues to escape the consequences of its actions. The ICC, another international body, has issued a warrant, an arrest warrant for Netanyahu. Yet the American empire, the overlords of our global order, have barked their command, and no consequence will occur. As Donald Trump brutally bites the world's nations with the venom of tariffs, it is important to consider what has influenced this and what it means, and also how we as nations, citizens, and policymakers should respond to this. Now that we've considered globalism, we also have to consider what the impact of Trump's tariffs on this global order is. Our world is increasingly interdependent, interconnected, and integrated. Nations are reliant on each other in this age of globalism. This can be and has shown to be conducive to collective global development despite its faults. However, it is conditional on the assumption that international relations are cooperative, cordial, and collaborative. This presents the world with a problem. Nations that show hostility, that act in self-interest, that sabotage the system, compromise the global potential for development and collective advancement. If there is no trust between nations, they cannot be interlinked, and they cannot be dependent upon each other for their growth and prosperity. Consequently, since the United States is now, and well, they have always been, a volatile, unstable, selfish global power, all signs and features warn that they are an unreliable and unworthy partner. We, the United Kingdom, Europe, should reduce our dependence on the United States as a consequence of these tariffs and these protectionist measures. We must achieve our own liberation. As Trump calls his day of tariff imposition, Liberation Day, we must also impose our own liberation. Just like how we as European nations severed our links and dependence on Russia in the aftermath of the Ukraine war, we must take the same action today. We must only be linked with those we trust, and the United States cannot be trusted. Practically, this means boosting domestic industries and production whilst reducing imports. It means engaging more with other partners regarding trade when it comes to the UK, such as the EU, the largest trading partner of our country. Retaliatory tariffs can contribute to this, but with them comes a short-term cost for consumers. However, in the long term, lower costs of production due to supply chains being closer to the UK and more domestic production, more production that is close by, sourced in Europe rather than all the way in China, will reduce business and consumer costs. This will strengthen our economy and our geopolitical strength. It will give us our independence and our liberation. It will also shield us from future autocrats and bullies like Donald Trump, who think it is their right to reign supreme over the world and assert dominance and force upon the weak. We must stand up resolute in opposition to this immorality. It is a no-brainer when considered with a long-term view, despite the short-term consequences. As for globalism, it will persist and live on in a diminished form, preparing for a new age in which cooperation is the code for success rather than ultranationalism and shameless self-interest. Another thing to consider here is the intricacies of economic production. It is widely recognized that goods produced in China and the developing world are produced at a far lower cost due to poorer working conditions and lower wages for workers. This fact is celebrated. I consider that to be an outrage. The exploitation of workers is absolutely fine because Europe is not being impacted. This is not correct. This is not moral. This is not right. This is a clear aberration that reinforces racist inequalities across our globe. The value of workers in developing nations is somehow less than those in developed nations. I refuse to accept that. The shifting of production to domestic or European markets is most often argued against due to the high costs that will be incurred, but not to do so would be immoral. This can also tie into a wider question about value. What do we as humans and as societies value? Do we value the welfare of our people, the cash in our pockets, the numbers on a spreadsheet? Too often it is the latter. It is time to redefine value and begin as global societies to value people, social interactions, communal cohesion, development and unity, rather than just money. While globalism does bring about global development and economic improvement, we also have to recognize its inadequacies and the inequalities that it imposes. Trump is unintentionally achieving a redistribution of global production with his tariffs, though his aims are not so benevolent. He prefers to skew the global system even further in favor of the United States, and he will likely achieve his goals. Despite the upending of our global order, it is likely that we will remain in a state of stagnation and a state of decline for the majority of our world's nations, and we will continue to see inequalities perpetuated whilst the United States expand, advance and develop, and we as poorer nations and as lesser powers, because that is what the United Kingdom is now, it is a lesser power and it has less influence upon the globe, and particularly for nations in Africa, nations in Asia that are continuing to develop and industrialize, they will see decline. They will not be able to develop as rapidly as they would hope. They will not be able to improve their living standards. They will not be able to improve the quality of their life. And that will be a consequence of Trump's actions. Trump will gain and America will gain, but the rest of the world will continue to lose out. And we will see a new global order that again favors the United States. Unless China can take action against this, we will be stuck in a new cycle of poverty, a new cycle of decline. And particularly for this nation, we will see ourselves go from a wealthy, developed nation to a poor third world nation. That is a trajectory that we are on. And that is a trajectory that we have to change, that we have to overhaul. And that will not come about with a continuation of the status quo, with the continuation of our continual orthodoxy of our current systems and orders. We have to change. We have to reform. We have to overhaul our systems and our structures if we want to change our trajectory to a trajectory of growth and trajectory of development. That is the order of our times. Yet, it is not just about the exploitation of people. How people are exploited in developing nations, that is not the only problem that globalism presents. Globalism and globalization exploit the environment as well. While Western nations may have stringent environmental regulations, these have begun to be weakened upon Mr. Trump's arrival in the White House. Developing nations do not have such protections anyway. This means that the environment is at a greater risk than ever before. Developing nations are large emitters with low environmental standards, and soon the United States will be a large emitter with low environmental standards. The high concentration of global production in developing nations, and the United States as a big nation as well, is negative for the environment. However, we must consider the situation from the perspective of climate justice. Historically, developed nations have advanced and industrialized rapidly due to their use of coal, oil, gas, and heavy industry. Meanwhile, developing nations have not had that luxury due to the science that we have discovered and the measures we have taken against environmental decline. It can be argued by these nations justifiably that it is hypocritical and unfair to force developing nations to halt their progress without compensation, as developed nations have already tasted the sweet nectar of progress, while developing nations will be consigned to generations of stagnation and decline when they are locked out of using the resources that are available, whilst the developed nations continue to enjoy the fruits of their exploitation of these resources previously. These questions of justice and environmental protection must both be considered simultaneously. Our global agreements at COP need to go further, particularly in reducing inequalities across our global systems. This means providing climate finance to poorer nations and imposing legally binding regulations. It means an end to fossil fuels, not phase down, but phase out. The presence of Trump means that this is highly unlikely and will likely not occur anytime soon. We need to step up as other nations, particularly the United Kingdom. They need to step up and they need to take the leadership in terms of the climate, and they need to lead from the front in the fight for net zero. They need to be leaders in the redistribution of global responsibility and the overhaul of our global economic systems, which continue to be reliant on finite resources. We must be independent. Now, let us also consider the reign of Mr. Trump so far. We've examined and uncovered the history of globalism, the intricacies of global production, and the economic impacts of the current global situation. While Trump's reign has so far been a chronicle of callous failures, sordid shortfalls, and blatant corruption, there are some minor hidden successes that we must recognize. But first, what are the failures that we have had to endure that have caused us to sigh and groan with frustration and despair? I want to talk about the corruption quickly before I list what failures we have had to endure as a globe and America as a country. Trump's tariffs mean that countries have to directly negotiate with Donald Trump if they want these tariffs removed. Companies have to directly negotiate if they want exemptions for their goods and their products. This means that companies that have links with Trump, such as Apple, Microsoft, Google, will highly benefit from this system because they already have connections with Trump, so will be more likely to have exemptions added. We have seen this already. Trump has already imposed exemptions for technology to help his buddies at Apple. This is blatant corruption. And we will continue to see such examples of corruption throughout Trump's reign because there is no principle of morality. There is no principle of purity left within the United States administration, and their democracy is continually sliding into decline. And we will see very soon, I believe, that the United States will be a nation of autocracy rather than the beacon of democracy that it portrays itself to be. Donald Trump has eroded democracy through his imposition of executive powers. Particularly egregious was his pardoning of the January 6th rioters, proving that the integrity of American democracy is not a priority for his administration. His unilateral imposition of tariffs, bypassing Congress, further demonstrates his contempt for democratic checks and balances. The USA is well and truly on the slide towards an authoritarian, fascist dictatorship. The signs are clear for everyone to see, and no one is doing anything to stop this decline. Donald Trump has fired more than 30,000 federal workers, mostly without justification, and largely having a negative impact on the quality of government services, all in the name of trimming the state, all in the name of a small state that does less better. I don't think that that is possible when you're cutting services like the Department of Education, when you're cutting workers that are vital for the functioning of the state, with minimal cost savings. This has nothing to do with cost. This is ideological. This is all ideological, and this is all part of his plan with Project 2025. He wants to undermine democracy. He wants to undermine the integrity of the US state. He wants to continually arrest the decline, and he wants to continually cause the United States to fall and fall and fall. He is not making America great again. He is making himself great again. The corruption that his administration has displayed, we can see it through crypto. He continues to promote crypto despite being the president and having interest in crypto. He continues to promote it and he gains financial advantage from it. He also gives financial advantage to his personal business interests. This is clear and blatant corruption. His abolishment of the Department of Education and US aid further undermines globalism and the order of the modern world that the United States has been shaping for decades. This risks a decline in educational outcomes. Abolishing the Department of Education will mean that inequalities across the country with regards to education will widen, and outcomes will likely be hit severely, particularly in impoverished areas where administration from local authorities will not be as effective and will not be competent compared to state administration. There will be inequalities in the curriculums. There will be inequalities in the quality of education in different areas, and that will lead to a decline in social mobility. On to the economy. After inheriting the strongest economy in the world, Donald Trump and his administration have destroyed the economic stability that Biden had built. They've crashed the stock market. They've induced rising, soaring inflation and interest rates, and they have contributed to lower business investment and low consumer confidence due to manic policies and constant U-turns, instability, and continual manic policies. That is what we have seen. We have not seen any semblance of a plan. We have not seen any semblance of order, and that will be continued throughout his administration. We have continually seen the signs that he is having a decline in mental acuity, and that is clear from his actions. Donald Trump has also withdrawn from the Paris Agreement, further undermining collective global environmental goals. He has eroded any semblance of migrant rights in the USA. He has closed off many avenues to get immigration access to the USA. Whilst this may be seen as a success for border security, it cannot be considered as one because there have been no safe and legal routes initiated alongside this illegal migration crackdown. Without safe and legal routes, this basically means no one can properly get to the United States if they need to. People who claim asylum cannot do so properly, and they cannot do so with a dignified system because there are no proper routes. There need to be proper routes of migration that allow access legally so that people do not have to resort to small boats, so that people do not have to resort to crossing borders like criminals. That is a solution that must be adhered to both in the United States, Europe, and in the United Kingdom. Resolute failures reign across the globe from the hand of Trump's apparent wisdom and transcendent intelligence, which is clearly yet another lie from his court. And the worst part is, this is not the full extent of his disastrous reign. This is not the full extent of his failures. This just displays the scale of his incompetence. In terms of his success, there are some key things that we can see. His termination of DEI programs in the government cannot be considered as a success, but his termination of DEI employees can. DEI employees are largely unnecessary and achieve nothing whilst incurring costs for the government. He has also banned trans athletes from gender-based sports, safeguarding the spirit of sporting competition. He has also decreased income tax as part of major tax legislation, actually helping normal people be better off. But that is basically the extent of his success. And it has been largely minor. Despite the tax cuts, his failures clearly outweigh his successes. His failures have been on an astronomical scale, and they will have reverberations across the globe. So, what can be learned from this Trumpian turmoil and the death of our global order? It can be learned that nations that are crushed beneath the heel of superpowers must arise in rebellion in times of crisis. That is the order of our times for the UK, Europe, and the developing world. We must hold our fists aloft in opposition to oppression, repression, and immorality. Trump will not last the test of time, but our global resistance to autocracy, repression, and a violation of our rights and our freedoms and our prosperity must last the test of time, and surely will. This has been Mission Undercover. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you to our sponsor Fish.Audio. Make sure to take advantage of a free trial at Fish.Audio today.